Hello and welcome to Jank It Up episode 16. I'm your host, Brian, aka BB Jank. I chose that one, that Jank reference specifically, because I'm super excited to have a special guest for this episode, all the way from California. We have Kevin from the Roll On podcast. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I've been listening to your podcast for a long time now, and I'm happy to join you and talk some Star Wars Destiny.
That is excellent. And thank you for doing that. And thank you for saying you listen. That's also super great. You know, I love Roll On. And if you haven't listened to the Roll On podcast, I encourage you to do so. It's you, Kevin, and your brother Corwin. You talk a bunch of Destiny, but it's casual, it's competitive, it's a nice mix. Obviously, you have a nice relationship with your brother, just a great synergy there. And as a casual player and as a casual podcast, there are so many competitive podcasts, like hardcore competitive podcasts, and they're really enjoyable to listen to. But I want to say, and don't take this as a slight, but if I'm looking at the Venn diagram of Jank It Up Fuzzball and all the other Destiny podcasts, I perhaps overlap the most with Roll On. At least in my mind, I feel like I overlap the most with Roll On. That makes me happy. I don't know how you take that, but I'm excited by that.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I definitely am proud of the way that we can sort of represent both sides of the coin. You know, Corwin has been the more competitive player, for our entire lives, really. And you know, I enjoy Star Wars too much to like get caught up in the hyper competitiveness of it, because at the end of the day, it's a Star Wars game, and I love the theme of things and making, you know, interesting combos that would never work in maybe the Star Wars universe. The only time I really get competitive is when I'm playing against Corwin. I really don't like to lose to him. And I lose to him more frequently than I would like to admit. But we do try to present a couple different ways to look at the game, and so I'm glad that that's coming through. And thank you for your kind words when mentioning that. I'm glad that we have such dedicated listeners like yourself.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and you know, the Destiny community is really enjoyable, and I know they are competitive, but everyone seems super friendly. They're really excited about the game, and I think overall, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've only been podcasting since October, and I know I have a kind of a unique voice versus what I listen to, but it's been great. And thank you both to you and Corwin for doing what you do. And I look forward to new episodes of Roll On all the time. So it's always exciting when they pop up in my feed. We're going to talk today about a specific character that was affected by last week's announcement from FFG with the errata. So we're going to get to that. But before we do that, in case someone hasn't heard Roll On, they're not familiar with you, I have a couple of a few questions I'd like to ask you, so the audience can get an idea of who's Kevin. And you know, you mentioned you're a huge Star Wars fan. So these are all Star Wars related. The first three are Star Wars related, not Destiny related. I'm going to give you just an either or option. And I'd just like your response in terms of which one you're a bigger fan of or which one you more align with. If you want to explain yourself, you can, or you don't have to. You can just answer it. You ready?
Sounds great. I'm ready.
All right, straight out of the gate, Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader?
Darth Vader, 100%.
100%. Okay. Next up, Poe Dameron or Han Solo?
Oh, that's a tough one. It actually really isn't that tough. I like Poe a lot. Obviously not as much as Corwin because he's on his Poe the Goat train. But Han Solo is a classic, so I got to go with him.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to stir the pot a little bit between you and Corwin. I know Corwin loves Poe, and so yeah, I was hoping you would go Han. So that's great. Classic answer. Last one: Phantom Menace era Maul or Rebels era Maul?
Oh man, now you're really trying to get me on the spot here. I think that unfortunately, you know, the Rebels era Maul is really well developed in the sense that they had more time with him, and I really enjoy that because you know, and in the Clone Wars too. You know, I really liked Clone Wars Maul because he was still this sadistic, you know, bloodlust seeking character that we probably thought we were going to get in Phantom Menace, but honestly, like the Phantom Menace Maul has such a special place in my heart because of how I felt when the Phantom Menace trailer dropped and then seeing it on the big screen, you know, seeing the double-bladed lightsaber and the Duel of the Fates was unlike anything we'd ever seen before in Star Wars. So because of the nostalgia factor and because of maybe some unrealized potential, I have to go Phantom Menace Maul.
All right, very good. I know Maul is near and dear to your heart, and mine too. And so I wanted to make sure I got that question in. Turning to Destiny, Kevin, what was the last deck you piloted in real life?
In real life, the last deck I piloted was Phasma 3 Sentinel Messenger with Retribution, a tip of the cap to Sarah Evans from the I Rebel podcast. She was able to pilot that deck to a second place finish at UK Grands. It was a deck that I had been messing with before the UK Grands results, and so I was further inspired to give it some more testing. And it's played pretty well. So I played a lot of casual games with Corwin a weekend or so ago, and we were able to get some games in. And Phasma Sentinel was the last deck I played. I think I lost, but it's still such a fun deck, and I really enjoy it.
That's great, and congratulations to Sarah. Yeah, second place finish is amazing, and that's awesome. Well, great. Okay, last question. I know you're a villain sticks kind of character, or at least you seem to go that. But besides villain sticks, is there another favorite deck type that you enjoy playing?
Honestly, it's been pretty well documented in my comments on the podcast and in other areas that I really enjoy middle decks, or not even so much middle as like two character lists. I'm not really a big fan of the three wide. It doesn't really fit my play style. I had probably the most fun I had in Destiny was when Director Krennic was out and about in the Spirit of Rebellion meta, and I was just going fast and adding more dice to the pool and you know taking control of the battlefield and doing things like that. So if it's a two wide deck, that's really my wheelhouse, and that's why things like Phasma appealed to me. That's why I played Vader in the last regional that I went to, making sure that I have sort of just two on the table, always two there are, no more, no less.
Nice.
That seems to be right where I fit, and it's been tough in such a heavy supports meta that we used to be in. We may still be in that, but time will tell based on the balance of the force that we just got. But I've definitely enjoyed the two character lists more than I have any other ones.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I hope it returns to that. I know right now it's pretty well documented that three wide or supports are where it's at, but hopefully with some of the things that they've been talking about recently, it'll revert back to that. Kevin, I had you on today specifically to talk about Snoke, and you made a Sith reference right there, but I know he's not truly Sith. But the Supreme Leader Snoke, he is a card that was released for Way of the Force back in last July. He was errated, given a point increase to kind of fix some things with him. And then he was just, I guess, re-errata or errated again this past week, where they lowered his point back to 1113, which was the printed, but they made it so that he can no longer Snoke anything other than a damage side. So he has been very prevalent in the meta as a ramp builder, snoking resources and whatnot to get out the larger supports. And now he is back to, I guess, more of an aggro version of that. And that excites me. A quick story about me. I'm a casual player. I don't go out and buy a bunch of product when a set comes out. How about you, Kevin? How do you go about gathering product for yourself?
Um, I think I buy a lot more product than I should, because I'm on I've been on a wedding budget recently, and that's a point of contention in the household is how much Destiny is too much. But honestly, between the Star Wars factor and the opening packs factor, I can never get enough. And I want to make sure that I'm such a collector when it comes to like the things that I'm really interested in. So before I played Destiny, I played X-Wing, and I wanted to make sure I had all the ships, even if I wasn't going to use them, because it was Star Wars, and because I wanted to make sure I wasn't behind the eight ball, and I could display the ships, and they looked really cool. So once Destiny came out, I heavily pivoted in that direction, and the collectible aspect of it made me just want to have everything that much more. So I purchased quite a bit of product, and I'm not really that disappointed by that, except for my wallet, because it does give me a chance to not only go out and support my local gaming stores, but to do things like drafts and give me more ways to interact with the community. So I probably spend too much money on Destiny, but I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can say the same thing.
Absolutely. Related to that, do you go buy a bunch of singles, or are you just really cracking boxes hoping to get what you want?
So generally, what I'll do is I'll buy a set amount of boxes, and then I will fill out the singles that I need either via trades, or if there's a single that I definitely know I want, like last set, not Convergence, but Across the Galaxy. I knew I was going to want to play Vader. I mean, who didn't, right? So I sort of did a preemptive strike on the singles market. I made sure I pre-ordered just one before the set came out, so that I knew that my chances were better of having an Elite Vader.
Sure.
So if there's stuff like that, and I'll probably do the same thing with Maul when Spark of Hope comes out, because it's one of those where you don't you there are characters and cards that you are okay with leaving the chance, and there are some that you aren't. So generally, I'll rely on my boxes and then trades after. But every now and then, there will be a character or a card that comes out that I just have to guarantee that I have two of. So
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I bring that up because I'm more of a casual player, and so I don't go heavy on the boxes. But I found myself with each of the more recent sets that I am going heavier. I used to not buy any boxes, and now I've bought a box for a box tournament of Convergence, and my friend Greg and I split a box, and I'm looking to snipe boxes if they're ever on sale. So that's true. This gets back to Snoke because I played in my first ever tournament last July. It was a sealed event at a store championship, and we got 8 packs, and in those 8 packs, I pulled a Snoke. So even though I hadn't played a single game, I felt like I'd won the day because I got a card that I would never go out and buy myself. Like I would never drop 20, 25, $30 on a single card. And that's always been kind of my relationship with that. It's like I got this card just on chance, and it was a card that I will never buy myself, and I felt like I had to play it. And that Snoke has always been in my mind because I have this card. It's like Vader for you. It's like if I had a Vader, I would do everything I could to find a way to play him. And so for me, having Snoke around for so long is great. Later in the year, me and a group of 3 other friends, we split our way the Force box, and we did a draft, and one of my buddies pulled a Snoke, and he doesn't play Destiny a lot at all. And so he said, why don't you just hold on to this for me, right? Because he knows that I play and all that. So at least I have access to Elite Snoke. So I'm always constantly wanting to play him, put him in decks, find a way to make it work. But as he's been used in the current meta more as a ramp, I don't have any of the things that he's used to ramp into, right? I don't have Vader's Fist. I don't have Entourage. I don't have all these things. And so with the errata this past week, in a way, it's like they've made Snoke my version of Snoke, which is the more natural, like, hey, you're going to Snoke for damage. You're going to ping your own character, and you're going to, bump his or her damage side up to do that. And for me personally, that's really exciting. How do you feel about the Snoke errata, or the corrections that they made this past week in general?
yeah, I love it. I think it's a lot more in the spirit of what the character was supposed to be. Generally, I think that the character was created at the point cost that he was created at. 13 was a significant number because it paired perfectly with Kylo Ren, which was already out because of the two-player set. And when Way of the Force hit, Jeremy was starting to take over and do things more his way, and we were starting to see these thematic pairings coming out. With Luke pairing perfectly with Rey, and you already had Poe and Rey and stuff like that. So I think Snoke was designed with Kylo in mind, but also like not designed in a way that was supposed to generate you 5 money a round. I just don't think that's. I think that resource curve was just way too high. So you mentioned earlier that people are always excited for Destiny in the community. I mean, I think more so now because Snoke is really, balancing Snoke the way they did really did open up the meta, at least for a brief period of time, until somebody figures out a new way to abuse the big supports. So I think that him being able to hit only damage sides is more fair. And it opens up a new world of possibilities for him in deck building, where you're not just trying to go 3 wide and pick characters that have a bunch of money sides.
Exactly. And yes, I echo everything. I think that's great. I'm excited. And so I wanted to have you on to just kind of brainstorm, now that Snoke can only be used to Snoke damage. What are the possible pairings that we're looking at? So we're no longer looking at 3-wide ramp where he's just going to get your resources. That's not going to happen anymore. So I would love to just kind of shoot some ideas off of one another. Like where are ideal decks for Snoke now? And maybe even creeping into Spark of Hope. Like, how do we see this character being used? Now, I will readily admit that he is not probably nearly as competitive as he was a week ago. But for me and my casual interest, this is great because it's just I get to use him the way I've always used him. And I know that if I go up against someone, they're not going to be using him to ramp into a fist turn one.
Yeah, and I would just say to the people out there who are automatically writing Snoke off now because he can't ramp. I mean, let's hold the phone here a little bit. I mean, yeah, sure, he's not gonna generate the amount of resources that you're used to, and maybe that's a supreme negative for some people. But this is a character who is costed at 13 points, that has 11 health, 2 focus sides, a damage side, and a resource side, and is able to increase your damage output on your other characters, which is going to be super valuable now that now that you're going to want to get value out of your character dice more than perhaps before. So I don't necessarily think he's in a bad spot. I would agree that he's probably not in as good of a spot as he used to be, especially with certain decks that completely relied on him snoking for money, if you will. But I definitely think that there's going to be a place for him if the meta goes back to more of an aggro mindset, and especially if Mill continues to be a prevalent deck archetype. Because if your Mill player is only expecting to take 1 damage, and then they end up taking 3, that could swing things in your favor. So I think he's still going to be in a good spot until proven otherwise. So I wouldn't go as far as to write him off just yet. But yeah, I'm excited about the possibilities, and I'm happy to discuss them with you, because Snoke is definitely one that I'm a lot more excited to play now than I was previously, and I know you agree with that.
Absolutely. So just to recap for those that maybe don't have a Snoke or aren't familiar, somehow aren't familiar with the card, you mentioned he's 11 health. He's a character. He's a leader. His tie sides are 2 indirect, 1 focus, 2 focus, 1 disrupt, 1 resource, and a blank. And his power action now reads: deal 1 damage to another one of your characters to resolve one of its character dice showing damage, increasing its value by 2. His point value is 11 for single die and 13 for elite, so it's only 2 character points higher for a second die. And as we just talked about, it's a pretty good die, right? So there's lots of things to do. So Kevin, lead us off. Anything jump out? You just mentioned how you like playing middle. Is there another like character by himself that you can imagine pairing with Snoke here?
Well, it's funny because when Snoke was originally errata to become 12-14, I believe it was right before Across the Galaxy came out, or it might have been soon after. And I hadn't had time to build a deck that I'd been thinking of with Snoke, that included Across the Galaxy's cards and characters. So going back to 11-13 allows for a deck that I had been thinking of initially, which is Snoke with Iden Versio. The reason I like Iden Versio so much is because she has 12 health, which means that she can take a couple Snoke power actions and still, be in a decent spot health wise. She has the 2 damage sides, so if you're snoking for damage, those are going to be 4s instead of 2s, which is a win. And then the rest of her sides are really useful, and they would have been great being quote unquote snokable sides, but they also are great in their own right. I mean, you're seeing a 2 focus, which is super useful, that can either help you chain focuses or get you to the damage sides that you need. Discard is great right now. Obviously, you're going to want resources. And the great thing about that is you could have played it with Snoke at 14, but now that Iden is 15 and Snoke is back to 13, it gives you room for a 2-point plot, which the only 1-point plot we have that isn't retribution is pretty much garbage and not really used. 2-point plots, there are a lot of them, and they're pretty diverse. So you can really take advantage of some of the plots that are out there. The one I really like right now that I'm definitely going to be getting some testing with is Separatist Conspiracy. That's a villain 2-point gray plot that has the action exhaust this plot and spot any number of leader characters to draw that many cards unless an opponent spends 1 resource or discards a card from their hand. So both Snoke and Iden Versio are leaders. So you're threatening to draw 2 cards with this plot, unless your opponent gets disrupted in some way. So I think that's a really cool way to use Snoke in an aggro format and giving you a little bit more disruption as you go.
I think that's a great choice. I know that her 2 damage sides, Iden's, are both 2 ranged, and I think that is really important. The last Snoke deck I built was a Snoke Battle Droid, Super Battle Droid, and it was a whole bunch of indirect. And so it was a lot of fun because the Super Battle Droid can fix his own die. But I played my son, and I did pretty well with it. And then I went up against Greg, and Greg's like, "Well, I'm going to kill Snoke by turn 2, and then I'm going to distribute as much indirect as you have." So he would win games with like 2 health on one character remaining and 1 health on the other character remaining. But I couldn't finish because I couldn't direct the damage. And Iden, all of her damage sides are direct. So at that point, you're saying, I'm going to plug 4 into this character or 4 into that character, as opposed to letting your opponent kind of spread it out. So that's a great choice from that standpoint as well.
Yeah, I really think that you hit it on the head with Super Battle Droid and Battle Droid. The multiple damage sides are going to be key, right? And that you want at least one of them to sort of be impactful. So if Snoke being at 13 entices you to continue to go wide, you're going to want to include characters that that have multiple damage sides, maybe even 3 if you can swing it, because you're going to want to be able to take as much advantage of that Snoke power action as possible. And then it's again in the middle or the 2 wide format. It's really the same thing. You want, especially because you have you're spending probably the majority of your points on your other character. You want to make sure you're getting the most use out of those character dice as possible. So making sure that they have damage sides that are going to be impactful when they are snoked, if you will, is going to be key. And it might open up some characters like maybe a Val. We haven't seen Val anywhere, right? Like Val has not seen a ton of play. The villain yellow character that came out in Across the Galaxy, but she has a 2 ranged and a 2 indirect, and with the special can also deal damage if your opponent doesn't have resources. So at 14 points there, you're only getting the 10 health, which is a little bit dicier with Snoke being able to hit for 1 continuously. But that does leave you enough points for a 3-point plot where you could put in something like a Profitable Connections to be able to continue your ramp, or and another 3 cost that adds to your win condition. So I think that making sure that you have the proper damage sides is going to be key. And I'm curious to see what people come up with.
Absolutely. Val is interesting. I've only played with her a couple of times, but I like that, like you mentioned, her special, being able to kind of steal resources from opponent. She does have the 2 range, the 2 indirect, has a discard, has a resource. And yeah, there'd be plenty of room for a plot. I want to double back to Iden real quick, because Iden is also a trooper. Not only is she a leader, she's a trooper, which means that, with a couple of riot shields, you could keep her around a lot longer, which I think is good. And I don't think it's a mystery that villain red and blue has some of the best mitigation in the game right now. So, staying in red seems like a good, solid choice, perhaps. But I'm excited to explore what other yellow and what other blue pairings we could think of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Riot Shield, when you're able to put it on a trooper, is probably one of the better damage blocking, or it's essentially removal, right? At that point, you're guaranteeing that you either remove a 2 damage, or on a trooper remove a 3 damage, which is even better for 1 resource. So yeah, Iden allows you to do that very well. I know you had discussed a little bit on the old Twitter having a Snoke deck with a First Order Stormtrooper and an Executioner, and the advanced training plot.
Yeah,
both of those are troopers, and that essentially gives you 5 out of 6 damage sides that you can Snoke at that point. So that's a spicy brew right there.
Right. How awesome is that, to be able to Snoke blanks? Because they'll actually, when you resolve them, you're resolving them as 1 indirect, and so a blank can turn into 3 damage towards an opponent, which is pretty fancy. That would be budget friendly and a lot of fun, I think. But it's 3 wide, so it's a little bit slower than like rolling out Iden. But yeah, I think it's fun to think about. And that plot, advanced training, is pretty magical with stormtroopers and executioners and the like. What are your thoughts on veteran stormtrooper? Veteran stormtrooper has 1 range, 2 range, 3 indirect, a resource, and 2 blanks. 9 character points, but 9 health. So a little more robust than a Faust or an Executioner.
Yeah, I really like Veteran Stormtrooper. I think the Veteran Stormtrooper has been sort of a byproduct of not really needing aggro characters at that point cost for a while. I mean, a lot of times when you see characters at 9 right now, you're looking at support characters like Watto and Wat Tambor, um, General Grievous. For a while, Mother Talzin you could run at 9, but a lot of times people were running her at Elite. So Veteran Stormtrooper has sort of taken a back seat to all the support characters. With Snoke, I think Veteran Stormtrooper could shine. It does leave you 8 more points to be able to put in, either another ranged character, maybe like a loose or commando droid if you really wanted to. But commando droid only has the 7 health, although the 3 usable damage sides again continues the trend. Or you could continue the trooper trend, put in an executioner. Sentinel Messenger is obviously a really valuable card. It only has the 1 damage side, but it can make sure you get to that 3 indirect or that 2 range with its focus sides, and gives you the extra top deck of the card. So Veteran Stormtrooper, maybe can break through here with Snoke being able to hit the damage sides, because it's not often you're going to get a 2 and a 3 on really any character that you don't have to pay for, much less 1 and a 9-point shell. Obviously the 3 is indirect, but in the late game that could make a big difference.
For sure. And a support card that I'm really starting to appreciate is Imperial Officer, because after you activate Imperial Officer, you can turn a trooper die to any side. So, if you can find that in your deck, and then you could use just the activation of the Imperial Officer to fix perhaps a trooper die into something that's, dare I say, Snokeable. I know you don't like that word, but a side that then Snoke can really take advantage of, assuming your opponent doesn't do anything to thwart that plan.
Yeah, Snokeable feels a lot better when it's not, referring to discards and resources. It feels a lot more intended now that it's only focused on damage sides.
Absolutely. Loose is a good call. Alan on Twitter also responded with Loose, and Loose has 3 damage sides, 1 range, 2 range, 1 indirect. Also has a discard and a resource and a miss. But for 11 points, you get elite character who has 8 health. It's more blue, but even with Snoke's 13, that would give you 9 points for something else, whether you wanted to put a trooper in there or somewhere in yellow. I don't know why you'd choose yellow or red necessarily, but that gives you a lot more for a 5 die start. You have plenty of room to find that 5th dice.
Yeah. So loose at 11, and then Snoke at 13. You could probably fit in a battle droid.
Oh yeah, sorry.
The 3 usable damage sides there is nothing to sneeze at. Also, if you wanted to make sure that you had proper subtypes online, you could sneak in a Claudite Shapeshifter. Now you would be mono blue at that point because the Claudite is gray. But if it gives you the option to include things that spot multiple leaders or spot a Sith, or we're seeing that there are a bunch of characters in the next set that are apprentices, like Maul, like Rey, like Kylo. So if there are cards that are coming out that give apprentices some help, or whatever it ends up being, the Claudite can help you out there. But I think Battle Droid would be the move in that sense. And you could also run loose at 1 die and include that 9-point character, like you said. If you wanted to get some yellow in, Mandalorian Super Commando is a trooper. So if you can find a way to go rainbow and 3 wide, by putting in an Executioner or another First Order Stormtrooper, then you could put riot shields on your Mandalorian Super Commando too. And the Super Commando not only has damage sides, 3 of them, but can generate ping damage with its power action. So that's even more damage that can be added to the mix.
Do you have the database open, or is this all pure just memory?
It's a little bit of both. I do have the database open, but I'm not. I'm only using it sort of to read cards that I don't remember the wording. When Snoke first came out and I was doing some testing with him, one of the first decks I came up with was Snoke Executioner Super Commando. So it's a little bit fresh in the mind because that was back in the days of Chance Cube, which you could bounce back from hand without bounce back to your hand without needing to do anything.
Oh right.
And then Mandalorian Van Braces had come out, so that was one that you could continue to bounce back and generate more damage with Super Commando's power action. So that one I confess is one I had thought of before. So it's not as impressive there.
No, it's awesome. I just know from the latest Roll On podcast, you were you were spouting all kinds of cards. That was impressive, just off the top of your head, and I think it's an impressive skill. I forgot that the Mandalorian Super Commando was a trooper, and so that is really, really nice. He is great with those 3 damage sides. No money, so he gives you 2 shields and a miss outside of those 3 damage sides. But you're right, you're able to ping for extra damage, which is always fun.
Before that was a problem because he didn't have a resource, so he wasn't as Snokeable as some other characters. But now it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because all you can Snoke is the damage.
That's right. Speaking of damage, let's try to find some of the biggest damage sides we can, and let's go straight to blue, and let's talk about our boys Maul and Savage. Do you think it's feasible, or do you think they're just you're hoping to get that 1-3 side?
Well, so Maul is interesting because Maul only has the 2 sides. Both of them are good. There's a 2 and a 3 side. Obviously, the other 3 is a pay one. But because he has 11 health, and because you're going to be dealing damage to him pretty regularly if you want to get that Snoke power action off, I wonder if Maul maybe is just a little too fragile in that spot.
Yeah,
certainly that's something that could be done there. But I think maybe you want, unless there are special cases where you can keep them alive longer, I think maybe you want something that's a little bit higher health, especially if it's going to be your main damage dealer that people are going to be focusing on. Funny enough, I do like the Savage idea because at 27, you're able to have the 3-point plot like Profitable Connections, and you're also because you're not spotting Maul with Savage, you're guaranteeing that Savage is going to roll out before anything else happens. Now, that could be a bad thing if your opponent, has claimed the battlefield and will be going first. And if they activate a character support, well, you can't do anything about it because you are forced to activate Savage. However, with Snoke's power action and with cards like No Mercy at your disposal, or Conflicted, which is a great card with Savage, rolling those dice into your pool is really going to put pressure on your opponent to get rid of them or to do something else about them, because Savage has, the 2-1 sides and then the 3-for-1. So those are 3 base sides that can immediately be Snoked for damage, for additional damage. And he's got 13 health, which means that he can take a beating and not really worry too much about Snoke power actions while he's doing it. So I like the pressure that deck could put on your opponent. I just worry that it's going to put you in a bit of a bind in the late game if your opponent is claiming first. Now, one blue character that we haven't mentioned and hasn't seen a ton of play is Asajj Ventress from Convergence. That's a 16-point blue character with 12 health that has 3 damage sides, one of them being a 2 and one of them being a 3. What do you think about Ventress as a possible Snoke partner?
I like it. I like it a lot because you're right. She has 3 damage sides, 1 melee, 2 melee, 3 melee for a resource. She has a discard and she has a resource on her own. Yeah, 16 for her elite, 13 for Snoke elite. She has 12 health. I think it's good. I mean, I think she's obviously better than Maul, who's also 16, right? So I think that's interesting. She's not seeing a ton of play right now, so I'd be excited to get her on the table and give her a chance to do some damage.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as say she's better than Maul, but that's mostly just my bias talking.
No, I understand.
Yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. We're part of the Maul clan here.
Right. A quick shout out to Brian of Golden Dice Podcast. Savage Asajj 2020. We're gonna make it happen. That's gonna be a thing.
Love it. I'm all about it.
Yeah, we'll do that. Would you ever consider doing a 3-die start with Snoke? It wouldn't be competitive, but would you ever think about running like Snoke at 1 die, and that gives you 19 character points to bring someone else in, a really big bad in, and just to, I mean, again, 3-die start, it's not great, but you can imagine that opens up things where, I'm looking at, if I jump to yellow, like Dryden Voss, he has a 2 melee and a 3 melee. Now he's at 20 points elite, so that probably wouldn't work, but you could do 1 die Dryden at 15 and then elite Snoke. I'm getting a little crazy here, Kevin, right? Just trying to think about really over the top kind of things. Like Vader, you have a single die Vader with elite Snoke. It's going to feel bad if someone takes that Vader die away, but I mean, there's some big plays out there.
Yeah, I think that if you're gonna have a character that can stand up to it, you are gonna feel a lot better bringing Snoke at one die because that character is probably gonna have the damage sides to match. I in the mono blue universe, Count Dooku springs to mind from Way of the Force because Dooku can guarantee you a damage side on activation with his ability. After you activate this character, you may turn one of his character dice to a side showing melee damage, turn an opponent's die showing melee damage to any side. So you're guaranteeing that there's a snokable die out there immediately as soon as he activates. And it could be the 2, it could be the 3, depending on what your resource status is. So in mono blue, running Snoke at one die, or even if you wanted to run Snoke at elite and run Solidarity or Bitter Rivalry as your plot, that there's a way to do that. But if you're worried about the damage or you're worried about just having one of every card in your deck, I think it's perfectly acceptable there to have Snoke at one die and make sure that you're guaranteeing the damage with Dooku. One card that hasn't seen a ton of play either that could also fit the one die Snoke archetype would be Callus from Legacies. We're talking here about 2 damage sides and 3 damage sides on a character. Callus has 4. And Callus has a power action that allows you to turn a die showing range to melee or vice versa, which is useful in making sure that you get a higher value if you're showing one of the one sides. So you could always throw Callus into the mix with a Snoke at either one die again, or if you wanted to add a Bitter Rivalry plot, you could do Elite. That gives you both access to blue and red, which you mentioned is really good right now in villain. Callus is also a trooper and a leader, so 2 really useful subtypes. And again, it's a card that is a rare, so it's pretty accessible and not one that's seen a ton of play. So there's room there for a little bit of innovation if you wanted to run Snoke at one die.
I love it. I love it. Callus. Yeah, I thought about Dooku, but I totally overlooked Callus. That's an interesting choice because you're right. 4 damage sides. I mean, just bring the heat, right? Show up and roll and see how it goes. That's awesome. Anyone else? I'm cautious of the time here. I don't want to take up all your time, but this has been really fun. Do you have any other characters that come to mind? Do you want to look ahead to Spark of Hope and see if there's anyone there, or for some reason the new Maul is not on the database, so I don't have his features in front of me. But I think he's just too expensive from a point cost standpoint.
Yeah, he's definitely too expensive at 20 because, even though he has the 4 damage sides, with Snoke at 11, you'd automatically have to run a plot, and that would sort of be annoying. The one I'd be very interested in, based on the few characters that we do have spoiled, would be the new Jango Fett. Jango, 11 health, so it's not 12, but with 3 damage sides, both sort of low, so you'd want to include Snoke to increase his potential there, and because of his ability that you're getting a money back every time you play an equipment. At 14 and 13, you're getting access to profitable connections once again. So you'd be able to generate money to put a bunch of equipments on Django and Snoke for more damage, and let your equipments do some of the other legwork. So that's interesting to me. There's no red in there for Riot Shield, but there are a lot more equipments in blue and yellow than there are in red. So you might get some more use out of Django's ability there. And at one die, you could also run one die Snoke with Elite Thrawn.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
Because Thrawn has the 13 health and the 2 big damage sides that are not pay sides, and it does give you access to the blue and the red. So already 2 characters that could benefit from Snoke being a damage only power action, and I'm sure we'll get plenty more as they go. But yeah, I'm excited for Spark of Hope. I'm excited more than that for what people do, not just with Snoke, but with all of the new changes. I mean, I think the one I'm most excited about is Ayla being back to 912, because I think that allows more people to get excited about Blue Hero, at least here at the beginning. So I'm excited to see what people come up with, and that's the best part of Destiny for me is coming up with new things and seeing what other people are playing and finding cool interactions and all that. And this discussion has really been awesome in trying to find a way to sort of teach an old Snoke new tricks.
You have a way with words, Kevin. I love that. You're right. It's interesting. Like these kinds of when they do the holocron updates, it shakes the meta up right in the middle between sets, and that is exciting because just when you think it's going to be a Snoke 3-wide summer, they do something like this to shake it up. I know there are people who are of the opinion where like they shouldn't have to fix a game they make, but it's nice that they are proactive enough to say, hey, these things are OP, and we're going to kind of adjust them, and that does open up. Like the moment Tuesday happened, my excitement for Destiny just spiked way up. And that's a credit to FFG for seeing how things were going and making changes. So I'm super excited about that. This has been fun. I'm biased towards him because of that random pull at a store championship. Here's a card that I would never go out and buy myself, but now I have, and I want to play. The Supreme Leader is dead. Long live the Supreme Leader. Kevin, at the end of every episode, I crack a pack. You got a second? You wanna join me in going through some Convergence cards?
Oh, this is one of the best parts. I wouldn't miss this. Let's go. Let's see what you get.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, I got a pack. This is again a Convergence pack. It's from Kingwood Hobbies here in Texas. I'm super excited for Trey and Kingwood Hobbies. I see their name coming up in some podcasts or in some articles from across the nation. So kudos to Trey and for Kingwood Hobbies. So thank you for this pack. Let's open it up and see what we got.
Yeah, sounds great. And shout out while you're doing that to Kingwood Hobbies as well. And the tournament that you attended that they ran sounded super cool, and it's awesome to see that they're doing so much for the community. So shout out there.
Very good, very good. All right, it's a yellow die. It is a rare card, so we're still waiting on that first legendary, but we will keep waiting. Skilled Tracker. Early thoughts, Kevin.
Skilled Tracker is really a card that I like more in a hero deck. Funny enough, it's a cheap way to get Leia 3, aka Boosh, to get her second part of her special online by spotting a villain card. A 1-cost villain card that you can get on the table quickly, gives you access to some removal. I think it's going to be at least currently a little bit more useful in that deck than maybe a villain deck, but we'll see if it finds a way into some more villain yellow decks.
I love that I just gave you the name and you know all this information, and it's a villain card and you're like, it fits best in a hero deck. It is 1 cost. It is yellow. It is an upgrade ability. It has Dengar on it. Its die is 1 disrupt, 1 discard, 1 resource, special blank. It says yellow character only. And then the special is remove a character die. So yes, I could see that being great on Leia Boosh. I have a Dengar deck kind of sleeved up right now, but this card is not in it. I'm just not feeling the love for this card, but maybe that's my own bias.
Well, in yellow, you're not seeing a lot of the effective 0-cost removal that you're seeing in red and blue. So maybe having this on the table would give you just that one more piece of mitigation that you might need. So maybe it's something to consider. I don't necessarily think it jives 100%, but again, like I said, bounties may come and change that. So we'll see.
I'm super excited for bounties, by the way. You're again, you and Corwin discussing bounties got me all kinds of excited. And I'm glad to hear that FFG is continuing with bounties on Spark of Hope. So I'm super excited about that. What's super relevant, Kevin, is our uncommon, in this pack is Bounty Board. It is a 1-cost support. It is villain. Its action says exhaust this support to search your deck for a bounty, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Then you must shuffle your deck. So there you go. What are your thoughts on Bounty Board?
I think that Bounty Board, if we get as much bounty support as we're seeing in the early spoilers of Spark of Hope, I think Bounty Board is going to be a pretty high include in some of these yellow decks. I think that with IG-88, with Django being a bounty hunter, with Ventress being a bounty hunter, Dengar, I think you're going to want a way to reliably get your bounties on the table.
Let's move on to the commons. Keeping on the bounty theme, we have a bounty. It's Deathmark, 0-cost downgrade bounty. After attached character is defeated, you may draw 3 cards. Which of the bounties do you like best, Kevin?
Currently, I think that Wanted is my favorite because of the ability to generate, more money for you, especially now that, the ramp has been hit a little bit. I think that Wanted is probably my favorite, but I'm curious to see what some of the new ones do. Chancellor's Edict that was just recently spoiled. The first blue bounty is really cool. So I think that's a really interesting design space that they're going to continue exploring.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, they're all, well, not they're all, but Wanted and Deathmark are both 0-cost. So it's really nice to be able to just slap this on a character because there are other things. If you're using Dengar at his activation, you can being a character that has a bounty on it. So there's certain things where just getting a bounty on a character is good. So after 3 straight yellow cards, here's a red card. Make demands. It is a 1-cost red villain event. Spot a leader to choose an opponent's character and deal 2 damage to it unless they give you 1 of their resources.
So this is actually a card that Corwin was really high on when it was spoiled, and I wasn't really on the bandwagon. But now that I mean, we just talked about Snoke and Iden Versio. I mean, this card with both of which are leaders. This card is a way to either get a free disrupt by essentially paying a card because they're giving you one of their resources, or it's a way to deal damage out of hand, which is going to be even more impactful now if you're trying to perpetuate the aggro archetype. So in a leader deck, I'm really starting to see a value in this card. So I think it's good to start finding these little hidden gems here and there.
Yeah, and it's the kind of card where and there's a lot of these, especially for me, more of a kitchen table player, where it's like that's interesting. I want to run that, but I think a few of these are going to start trickling into meta consideration, right? Cards 30, 31, 32, where they're going to see some value, especially like you said, spot a leader, and it's either a free disrupt or it's 2 damage out of hand. So I think I think make demands could show up in a larger role in the coming months. Last card, Kevin, it's Defensive Stance. It is a blue 1-cost event. Give a character 2 shields. It is hero. It's got a nice picture of Ahsoka on it. What do you think, shields?
I love the art. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the art on the reprint is great. I think that if you're going to be generating shields in a blue hero deck, there are probably better ways to do it than including Defensive Stance. But in limited format, like if you pull this in draft, where the name of the game is outlasting your opponent, this is going to be really useful for that. So I think that you got a really good draft card there.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a polite way of saying kind of useless in standard, but I agree. In draft, you'll take 2 shields for a resource, no problem there. So just to recap the pack, our rare was Skilled Tracker, which is a villain upgrade ability. Our uncommon was Bounty Board, and our 3 commons were Deathmark, the downgrade bounty, Make Demands, the red event, and Defensive Stance, the blue event. Kevin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving some of your time, being my first guest that is in a different location. Both times I've had Greg on, he's been in this room with me. It's super great to be able to reach out to a fellow content creator and have you join me and just discuss the Supreme Leader, where to go with Snoke. Any closing thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I would just say one, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be a guest on your show. Again, I listen to all your episodes as they come out, and I really appreciate the content that you do, and I really appreciate the take that you have on the game. With your ability to generate not just content but excitement based on a lot of people in Destiny will make sure to go out of their way to get all the cards and all, and have everything and be able to play all the big meta decks, and you are able to enjoy the game and promote this atmosphere of fun with the cards that you have and with the cards that you play with Greg and with your son and all that. And I really appreciate that outlook on the game because it shows us that like this game is for everybody. This game is not just for the hyper competitive people. And I appreciate your content, and I'm looking forward to more and more of it. And so thank you for having me on your show. It really was a blast. And hopefully soon we can get you on Roll On as well.
That'd be great. And let's talk about Roll On, because where can people find Roll On? I mean, I think if you're not listening to it, you absolutely should be listening to it. But how can they find Roll On? How can they reach out or find you and your brother? And what are all the details on that end?
Absolutely. So we are on Twitter at Roll On SWD. That's generally where I will go on the interwebs and trash Corwin, and you can find us chatting on there. But if you want to listen to us, we will tweet out our episodes every time we put them out. But you can also find us on Shout Engine, shoutengine.com/rollon, and that's the full list of our episodes. We've done 32 of them so far, and we're going to continue arguing about content as best we can. So we're enjoying ourselves, and thank you for asking people to go check us out, because we love as much feedback as we can get. We just love talking Destiny, just like you do. So we're gonna continue to do it.
Well, that's great, and congratulations on 32 episodes. I'm halfway behind you. I'm at 16, but I'm going strong, and I'm looking forward to making the next 16 and see where it goes. So, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for listening, everyone. As always, play some jank, roll some dice, have some fun. We'll talk soon.